Hello, welcome. I am very excited about this because I told you guys at the beginning of this year, I just really wanted to get more into reading some fiction because last year I read a ton of nonfiction, like personal development, self-help, that kind of thing, which I love. And I ended up getting really burnt out on it. I just felt like I kind of got maxed out on information. So this year I made it a goal to read more fiction. Like for every nonfiction I read, try a fiction. And I just have to tell you that it has totally reignited my love and passion for reading. And it's just been so fun. So I'm really excited to share with you my book wrap up. I'm going to do January and February since I didn't do one for last month. And then I wanted to tell you also, if you are interested in any of these books, I will link most of them, at least my favorite ones, on my Amazon storefront, which you can find by clicking the link in my bio. And if you are not already on Goodreads, the app, I highly recommend. It's really cool because you can search any book and it will give you reviews, but it'll also tell you what it's about, all kinds of stuff. And it's really cool because you can make a reading list on the app of books you want to read, and then you can also pick a book when you're reading it and track your progress, and when you hit complete, it'll add it to your list of read books. And you can also set a record for the year. So this year, say I wanted to read 30 books. Every book I complete, it will put towards my goal. So I can kind of track my progress. And yeah, it's just really fun. And you can add friends on the app too. So if you end up downloading it, you should add me so you can see what books I'm reading, what's on my want to read list, and then I can see what you're reading as well. So let's dive right in, you guys. I will try to remember as much as I can about them as far as author, but I did let some people borrow some of the books that I've already read or donated them, the ones that I did not want to keep when I was done with. So I have some of them here to show you, and the others, I'll just tell you the title. If you want to check them out, then I highly recommend. If you don't like buying new, I really love the website Thrift Books, or obviously shopping your local thrift stores. We have one in town that sells books for 10 cents each. So if you want to find some good books, check out your local thrift stores. So let's just dive right in. I'll start from the beginning of January. I knew I would need something really good to get me reading fiction. So I started with a classic, Redeeming Love by Francine Rivers. It's a Christian fiction. It is a take on the story in the Bible of Hosea. And it is, if you've read this book, you probably understand what I'm talking about when I say this book made me love reading again the first time I read it, which was a couple years ago. A friend gifted me this book, and it's just so beautifully written. It's written in the 1800s. I think it's 1800s. So it's not totally modern, but very well written. It's a love story. It makes you laugh, it makes you cry, it makes you fall in love. It's just so, so good. So read Redeeming Love. Then I just really loved reading after that. So I was okay, I gotta find another good one. A friend recommended this one to me. It's called The House Between Tides by Mayne. And I was blown away. Again, set in early 1910, early 1900s, I think. But it goes back and forth between 1900s and present day, early 2000s. This book is ridiculously good. It's a murder mystery, but it's not dark at all. It's very sweet. There's a love story throughout, but it's not too much romance. It really is focused on solving the mystery. And I am telling you, you will not figure it out until the end. I thought I knew, and then I thought I knew, and then I thought I knew. I didn't know. So you got to read this one if you want a good murder mystery. And my nonfiction for the month of January was Rhythms of Grace by Carrie Weems, and you need this book. I'm telling you, I feel like this book was written straight to me. It's all about, let me just tell you, discovering God's tempo for your life. But for me, what prompted me to read this book is, my sister-in-law recommended it to me, but I really wanted to focus on rest because I am someone who really loves work, but sometimes I work and work and work, and I get to a point where I'm I'll rest when I get time. But we know that if we wait until there's time to rest, there will not be time to rest, right? So I just wanted to take it upon myself to prioritize rest from the get-go this year and just really learn a biblical perspective and even a physical perspective, which I'll get into in a minute. Another book I read about that, but this book is so stinking good. It's very practical, which I personally really enjoy. And it takes you through these different pace setters for your life, like the main categories like health, relationships, things like that, that really dictate your priorities, your goals, the way you spend your time. And for me, it was super helpful, especially because at the back of the book, she has this reboot guide where it walks you through how to actually structure your life and your schedule to reflect your priorities. And so it helps you like set yourself up for success basically. And man, I refer back to this book all the time. I tell all my friends about it. It's so good. And I highly recommend if you just need a refresh, if you just need to figure out like how you want to align your schedule to work for your priorities and your goals and that kind of thing. So that's Rhythm of Grace. And then the next personal development self-help kind of book I read was Woman Code, and I lent it to a friend, so I can't show you, but it's by Elisa Vitti, I believe. And I wanted to read this book because I have struggled with hormonal imbalance my whole life. Like, I've always had issues, okay? So I was like, I've heard this book talked about over and over again. It's been recommended. And I was like, I just want to go ahead and read it because recently, I won't get into the whole story, but basically I'm dealing with some blood sugar issues and I'm pretty sure it's all connected, like gut health, hormones, blood sugar issues, long story short. So I was really excited to read this book and it was extremely insightful and I learned so much about how it is all connected. And not only that, but just how to really care for your body so that you can show up, and learning about syncing your cycle and all of that. And so if you were around by Words in February, you probably heard my friend Becca Collins doing a training about how to align your life with your cycle, like syncing your cycle so that you can work with your body and not against it. And I'm just really fascinated by that kind of thing. So I thought it was a great read. It wasn't super sciencey, which I feel like would be someone's hesitation to read it because it is medical and scientific based, but it's very practical. It's a quick and easy read, or at least it was for me. And I will say, because I think some people may be wondering how I'm able to read so many books. And I just want to say, please don't feel bad if you're like, I will never be able to read that much. Like, how is she reading as a mom and like everything she has going on? Because I've had that conversation before. And another reason I started reading more is because I noticed my anxiety was really high when I spent a lot of time scrolling before bed. So this year I decided to cut that out and instead spend time reading. So we put Judah to bed around 7:30. I have some time with Christopher. We may watch a show or something, but I put my phone down at 9:30, and then from there, I just have time to wind down before bed, and I've been reading. And sometimes if it's a really good book, I'll stay up for a while reading it, and that's how I've been able to read so many. But really for me, it's just been so refreshing. And anyway, I'll get off that tangent, but those were my books for January, and I really enjoyed them. Next up was my first one for February, and it's called Present Over Perfect. I can't remember the author's name right now, and honestly, it wasn't my favorite. It was beautifully written, but the reason I didn't really love it so much is because I am such a practical person, and I went into it thinking that it was going to be, steps to help you overcome perfectionism or something like that, and it was more just the author sharing stories from her own life and lessons that she learned. So it was more of a story rather than tips and practical, like step by step, if that makes sense. So I did love it, but I did love the way it was written. It was beautiful, but it wasn't what I thought it would be. So it's not really top on my list as far as the personal development goes. But if you are into that, just like reading people's stories and their reflections, it's a great book. So next was my first fiction of February, and oh my gosh. After I read The House Between Tides, I was like, okay, I'm really into this whole mystery and thriller and all of that. I just like that. And I told you guys on my stories, I don't know why I do this to myself. I'm pretty sensitive to that kind of stuff. I am a little scaredy cat, and it keeps me up at night. But I went to Half Price Books because I had this gift card and I was like, I'm getting all the murder mystery books. And I found this one in the clearance section. It was called Sworn to Silence. It's about this girl who grew up Amish. She returned to the town later on in life as a police chief, and she gets put on this case of a serial killer in her town. And it's this crazy story of how she has ties. There's like this conspiracy. secrets, all the things. It's very interesting, but it is also pretty graphic as far as the murders go, and it is very disturbing. So I wouldn't recommend it if you are not into that kind of thing. I mean, I don't know if anyone's into that kind of thing, but if that freaks you out, maybe don't read it at night if you want to read it, but it was a very good book. I finished it in 2 days, I think, 2 or 3 days. So I couldn't put it down. It was really well written. It wasn't cheesy at all, like the Amish stories. Like, my mom reads a bunch of Christian fiction that are about like Amish love stories. I'm not really into that thing. Like, nothing against Amish people. I think they're awesome, but those kind of stories are not my cup of tea. So anyway, all of that to say, very good book, pretty creepy, but I loved it. So next, I read another fiction called The Curious Incident of the Dog in the Nighttime, okay? I don't have this one with me either, but this one was really interesting. I'll just go ahead and say I didn't love it. It wasn't my style of writing. It wasn't my style of story, but it was very brilliantly written because it's about autism, and it's this boy who's narrating the book through the lens of his autism, and it's really insightful if you look at it that way. So all of my opinions aside, it's a brilliant book. It's really well done. It is also a murder mystery, but it's more quirky. It's not so much like thriller. It's just this boy like writing his book and like sharing all his quirks throughout the way. So I have seen nothing but good reviews on this one, so I wanted to read it. I read it in a day. It's a very quick, simple read, but just, again, not necessarily my cup of tea, not the style that I would normally read. So moving on to my next fiction of February, which y'all are gonna laugh at me. It's a big one, okay? This is by Francine Rivers, who wrote Redeeming Love. My dad got this for me for Christmas last year, and at the time I was like, I am never gonna read that. Like, that's such a big book. When am I gonna find time to read that? But I read this in 3 days. It's another Christian fiction. It's a love story. Again, these are not cheesy. I hope like it doesn't seem that way if I say it's Christian fiction. There is some Christian fiction that's like, ugh. But these are actually really well written and really just good, wholesome, sweet, very just good love story. So this one is about a painter. It's about an artist who hires a personal assistant, and she's got all this stuff going on, like had a really rough past, has a son, she's a single mom, needed a job, but the painter is like a really rough guy, rough around the edges. He grew up in the streets, like he was a graffiti artist, but now he's like, I don't know, just this troubled artist. And so they work together, and they have this like hate relationship at first. They just cannot stand each other, but then their love starts to blossom. And so it's just this interesting story about how their broken past kind of like end up connecting with each other. And anyway, it's a really good one. I highly recommend this. 10 out of 10. For sure, 10 out of 10. So that brings us to the end of February, which is right around the corner, but I haven't finished these last 2 yet, but I probably will in the next few days. So I figured I'd go ahead and include them in the February wrap up because they are stinking good. And I've talked a lot about this one on my stories so far. It is Growing Up Social. It's written by Gary Chapman and Arlene Pellicane, I think is how you say it. But Gary Chapman is the love languages guy. So if you're familiar with the love languages, you would really love this book. I personally love the love languages and all those kinds of tests. I think they're super insightful and fun. But this one is all about screen time and how to raise your kids to be really connected socially in a world that is very screen driven. And it's phenomenal. I just read yesterday a chapter about screen time and the love languages and how it really affects your kids. And there are things in here where I'm like, I'm gonna have to come back and read this every single year as Jude is in a different stage, because it's just so helpful. Like, it's very practical, it's very insightful, and it's all based on this idea of how to really love your children and help just nurture their relationships and feelings of connections when it would be easier just to put them in front of a screen. So if you're a parent or you want to be one, I highly recommend this book. Or if you're just interested in screen time and how it affects your brain, like, this is an interesting read. I actually have a couple other books on my reading list that have to do with screen time, because that's something that I've been learning about this year in my own life in regards to my anxiety. So I will do reviews on those when I get there. But for now, this one has been really helpful as a mom. And last but not least, you guys voted. And so I am finally starting a series that I have been waiting forever. Actually, I've been putting it off forever. I started reading when I was in 4th grade and I read a whole 1 chapter. But you guys, I am finally reading Harry Potter and I just love it. I've always loved the movies. I grew up watching them with my dad, which I know is kind of controversial as a kid, but I just always loved them, and Christopher's family loves them. And so I was like, you know what? I should just take the time to read the books. And I didn't realize what a quick and easy read they are. And I honestly forgot that like these were originally kids' books. And so reading it, I'm like, man, I just can't put this down. It's so fun. And yeah, so far I love it. I'm not super far in yet, but I mean, I know how the story goes. So I'm kind of excited to get like the full story, you know, like the things they leave out in the movies, because I've heard there's just so much more to the story. So I am loving it so far, and it's just been a fun, quick read. And I think what I'm going to do is like read one and then watch the movie as I go. So anyway, that is my book wrap up for January and February. I hope you've enjoyed this. I'm going to save it to my feed so you can go back and watch later. Or if you are rewatching, thank you for being here. I have loved sharing my books with you this year. And I just want to leave you with a thought that I thought was really interesting. And it's from a book that I read actually last year, The Slight Edge, I think. And it's talking about the importance of reading. And it said, why is it that a kid who doesn't read is considered slow, but an adult who doesn't read is considered normal? And I just think that's really fascinating. And it really got me thinking. I was like, you know, we grow up in school learning about how important it is to read, like the things it does for your brain as far as helping you focus. And there's just a ton of science behind this that is even talked about in the screen time book that I mentioned. But that's something that I've been thinking a lot about lately, is I just really want to make sure that screens aren't affecting me in more negative ways than they need to. You know what I mean? So anyway, I hope that's helpful. I hope that's some food for thought. And then again, if you haven't already, go check out my Amazon storefront where I've linked most of my favorites from this list. Probably won't link every single one, but feel free to go and check it out. I do get a teeny tiny commission from your orders, but it would mean a lot to have your support if you do decide to buy them. And then go add me on Goodreads so we can follow each other in our book reading process this year. And then I would love to hear from you. Please send me your recommendations, comment on this video, tell me what I should read next, tell me what you are reading. I would love to be able to talk about them together and just reignite more people's love for reading. It's just been really fun. So I hope that I can pass on some good ones to you. Anyway, I love you guys, and I hope you have a great day.